and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
Hey there, this is Dylan from Blues Coasters, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hello, it's me, the Ambassador, and you are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
What's up, guys? This is Sean from Dr. Coaster, and you are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Collins.
And I'm EB.
And we are from CoasterRadio.com, the original theme park podcast.
And you guys are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
My name is Brashay.
What's up, guys? My name is Prime.
We are Melanin Coaster Network.
And you are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Coaster Challenge podcast is here. It's time to face your fears. Get that theme park therapy and lend us both your Coaster Challenge podcast is here. Your fear can disappear. We know that theme park therapy can dry up all your tears. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? We accept because you know we're not average.
You're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast. A journey where people become fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please, secure your hats and glasses and keep your hands and arms inside the podcast. It's time to accept the Coaster Challenge with your hosts, Andrew Locke.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew. I've got a special guest with me here today. It's actually a friend of mine. Welcome to the podcast, Brian, aka Midnight Coasters. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I've been following the podcast for a while. Haven't listened because I want to keep it surprised. Get on here and just kind of feel it out. But no, I've been following the page for a while. I've seen some of the guests you have, and it's really cool what you guys are doing.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, we've had some pretty awesome guests on here, and we just keep it rolling. We got good momentum. We got some exciting things coming up here in season 3 that you're part of. And yeah, it was great having you on. You know, I was just talking. I did another interview earlier today for the season 3 here, and was just because of how the conversation went. Just happened to talk a lot about Instagram. There's another Instagram enthusiast on there, a friend of mine, and actually from Switzerland of all places. And I was talking about how Instagram, more than other social media these days, is really enthusiast central. And you know, you and I, like so many other people I've met and guests we've had on and friends that I've made, kind of connected up on Instagram originally, and you know, talked for quite a while before meeting in person. We got to meet in person last November because she came to IAPA here in Orlando. She lived down south in Southern Florida, and you know, it was great meeting you. And I'd gotten to know you pretty well from Instagram chatting, but yeah, it's not the same as meeting someone in person, and didn't have really an idea of how you were like in person. And then we met up at a park, and I had some other friends with me, and you were, you know, super enthusiastic, very friendly and outgoing, and like, yeah, this guy, we got to have him on the podcast. A great personality to interview. So here we are. So
well, thank you. Yeah, that IAPA, that was a fun trip. I only had a day up there, or 2 days, because I went to SeaWorld the first day. But yeah, that was a lot of fun getting to meet you, meet your friends, hanging out at the park. But yeah, I'm excited for the end of the month because I'll be back up there for SeaWorld, a convention, Fun Spot, and Islands. So
yeah, IAPA last year was great. You know, that was my 3rd year in a row, not counting 2020 because it didn't happen at IAPA. And each year it just keeps getting better and better from a sort of networking standpoint, you know, friends and, you know, I can't say colleagues because I don't work in the industry, but, you know, in terms of the podcast, you know, former guests, a lot of VIPs, manufacturers, parks, and just, you know, it's just great to see everyone and meet everyone. And in some cases, meet people in person for the first time. And hopefully we still continue to go to IAPA for those of us that don't work directly in the industry as our day jobs. But, you know, that mess that happened last year, hopefully we'll all get to go. So, but in any case, let's get started with the interview itself. So I know you know me, but probably a lot of our audience doesn't know you, at least certainly not as well as I do. So why don't you start off by telling our audience about yourself and your love of parks and coasters?
My name is Brian. I've recently turned 24. I've been riding roller coasters since I was, probably 8 or 9 years old. I live down south, South Florida. We had a Boomers up here in Dania Beach with the very infamous, now defunct Dania Beach Hurricane. My dad and I rode that thing pretty much every weekend, weather permitting. It was a fun experience. I missed that coaster a lot. So one YouTuber did a video on it, Expedition theme park. Watching that video was hard because seeing a coaster that I had ridden, as a child, that is no longer there, and I drive past it maybe once a month. It's now a strip mall. But no, I've been riding that since I was a little kid. When that was torn down, I think 2015 was it finally removed.
Yeah. So where that was along a freeway, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was right off of 95.
Yeah. So I think because I used to go to Miami, to Fort Lauderdale to some degree, but mainly Miami a lot when I was younger, and because I had family down there. I was the typical guy from Northeast, from New Jersey, that had grandparents in Florida. Flew down here once or twice a year. Very, very stereotypical.
Yeah.
But I love those visits of South Florida. It wasn't so much going to parks. It was more going to places like I don't know if you're young enough, or I don't know if you're old enough for these to mean anything to you, but to go into Parrot Jungle, the original location,
Yep.
Monkey Jungle.
Yep, I've been there.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love visiting there because I love animals. Everglades,
Yep.
The Miami Zoo, and so many other things. And I remember, I don't think I ever rode the Hurricane. I remember riding past it, when we were driving places and stuff. So, but that was your first.
Yeah, that was my that was like my first major roller coaster. I'd ridden like kiddie ones and stuff at fairs, but like my first major 100-foot coaster was Dania Beach Hurricane.
Gotcha. And okay. Oh, you know what? I'm looking. So did that open with Boomers?
No, I believe that opened later. That opened 2000, so it didn't operate for very long. It operated 11 years, so a little longer than Son of Beast. But
yeah. Okay. Well, that was not the coaster I'm thinking of.
No, this is the one. This is the one that's up. That would have been up 95 heading south. Yeah, this thing was a lot of fun for being as compact as it was. There was a lot of airtime, especially with those 6-seater PTC trains. They ran, I think, 5-car 3-seater PTC trains. So you can imagine the whip over the first drop.
Yeah,
in the back row of a train that long.
Right. So it's 30 capacity then. So 6 times 5, right?
30 riders per train, yeah. And they had 2 trains, but they only ever ran 1. Very rarely did they run 2.
Okay. Yeah, the coaster I'm thinking of was up. This is back in like the 80s. So this is when I was a little kid, but so it must have been something else.
Starliner?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Where was Starliner at, by the way?
Starliner used to be at where Legoland now is.
Legoland's up here?
Starliner, Miracle Strip Amusement Park in Panama City. Starliner.
This was down in the Miami, kind of Fort Lauderdale area. There's a wooden coaster down there. Yeah, I don't remember what it was. But anyway, wooden coasters, they're a challenge here in Florida.
Oh, yes.
It's funny. The first time I rode White Lightning just a couple of years ago, it took me a while to ride it. Just never got down there. I was like, oh boy, this is a wooden coaster. It's at a smaller park. It's here in Florida. It's going to be rough. And I was blown away by how good it was.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to ride it together last year. But then you got, Mind Blower, which is much newer. And that's a whole nother story. But of course, we know what happened to Gwazi. Also, it didn't last very long. But I mean, wooden coasters, you can do them in Florida, but you got to
do them right.
Yeah, they're labors of love to keep them up. But anyways, so, okay, well, thanks for introducing yourself. And you already answered the first question we normally ask, which is, first coaster that you rode. So what we're going to move on to now is what we call our fear journey, which is kind of central to our mission. It's all about kind of the other side of theme park therapy. It's kind of where you start, and kind of basically it kind of relates to kind of the first time you really get the the theme park therapy kind of benefits from the parks is basically conquering your fears on a ride. A coaster might be a thrill ride, flat ride, drop tower, whatever it may be. And then the transformation that generally happens after that, which I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I won't say anything beyond that. But in any case, so it's a journey. So it's kind of a few questions here. We're gonna, kind of a time machine sort of thing here, call it the theme park time machine. So what would you say is the coaster or ride, whatever it may be, that in your life has scared you the most? The most anxiety provoking and so forth.
Funny enough, it was last year. I rode possibly the freakiest thing I've ridden to date. I had never ridden an RMC until last year.
Oh.
Again, being in Florida, we only have one, and it wasn't. I'm 4 hours from Tampa.
Right.
I was out in California last year with my dad. I did a day at Knott's and then 3 or 4 days at Magic Mountain.
Okay.
So my first RMC was Twisted Colossus. I went into it thinking, I heard good things about it, but I went into it with like, oh, this is going to be like a Woody. It scared the living hell out of me. Excuse my language, but it scared me. Like genuinely scared me, because not riding it and not knowing what they're like, it's like you go into that and it's that like, oh my God, and there's another lap.
Yeah.
It scared the living crap out of me. And as soon as I got off, I called my dad. He was at work. He was working for his company out in California at the time, or for the few days. And I go, I don't know what I just rode, but it scared the living crap out of me. And I'm taking you on it. Because the last day we were in California, we both went to Magic Mountain together. I took him.
Nice.
And it scared the living crap out of him. And now he loves RMC now.
Yeah, interesting. My first RMCs were, based on where I was living in the time when RMC was kind of starting to come up. I mean, it was a few years after they had gotten started. So my first one was in Northern California, Joker. I was living in San Diego when I rode Joker as well, but I had not been to Magic Mountain in a while, and just happened to wind up being up in Northern California for work and spent the weekend, went to Discovery Kingdom for the first time in a while, rode Joker, and then I think that's part of why I wound up going to Magic Mountain soon thereafter, is because how much I love Joker, even though it's a smaller RMC. And, the thing about RMCs, now, to be clear, Iron Horse, iBox-based RMCs, like we're talking about, is, my opinion is, they don't, of course, ride like wooden coasters, to your point. But they're obviously steel coasters fundamentally, but they're very unique. Like, you could have your eyes closed, have never been on an iBox RMC, and you would know it's an iBox RMC. You know what I'm saying? The forces are different. In many ways, RMCs are more intense, especially the airtime. They just, anyway, this is vivid for me because literally I was at Busch Gardens last night for a VIP media event, which was amazing, and got, a couple hours of ERT at night on an Iron Gwazi. Like, we were sitting on it. We got only 8 rides, only because there were other things to do. There was a food and wine festival that was, it was complimentary for us because we were basically previewing it. And then we also got to ride a Serengeti Flyer at night. So there's a lot going on. But just being able to sit on an Iron Gwazi at night is incredible. And that ride is so. Did you get to ride it at night?
I did. I was up in October for Halloween. I went to the Hollow Stream. Yeah, and I rode it. So I got there in the morning. I got there at Park Open. Actually, I got there before the Park Open. We rode it in the morning. I was like, that really wasn't that intense. Like, I thought I was expecting, knowing only Twisted Colossus, I thought it was going to be, because it's bigger, I thought it was going to be much more insane.
Right.
And morning was like top 10, maybe a top 10 ride.
Yeah.
Midday, it went up to like a top 5 because it starts to speed up. I got a midnight ride on that. And it blew my mind.
That's right. You messaged me about that. I remember that because of
Oh my God, because we were waiting in line. There was that little bayou house next to it, like on the backside. We were waiting in line for that, and Iron Gwazi went down the drop, and it's coming around that turn before the death roll, and it's hauling. And I have a 4K video of it just hauling through the death roll, and I'm like, I know what we're doing before we leave. Like, there's no way we are not riding Iron Gwazi this late at night and not ride, and not gonna miss it. Like, it shot up to my number 1 immediately.
Oh, nice. Well, there's an answer to another question. We'll talk more about that when we get to that, nonetheless. But that's okay. some coasters, they warm up more than others. It's all physics and dynamics and, other things. But Iron Gwazi, the difference between, because I've done, first, many times, first ride of the day, rope drop, even on a warm day. And then I've done, many night rides, last night ride of the night, many times. And everything in between. And the difference between a night ride and a day ride on it, just from a physical perspective, not the visual stuff, is huge. It's huge. Yeah, it's crazy. So, okay, but before you rode Iron Gwazi, you rode Twisted Colossus.
Correct.
Obvious, right? Okay, that's your first RMC, and that was one that kind of freaked you out the most. Okay, so
that scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah, and given that it's a Mobius and the way in which it's a Mobius, I'm kind of curious, but we'll get to that. But first, how did you feel like online for Twisted Colossus, and before getting on, like how was the fear manifesting?
So I'm a thrill junkie. I always have been, regardless of what it is. Right. If it's high octane, if it's fast, if it's loud, stuff like that. I'm a car guy as well.
Yep, you and
loud,
I both. Yep.
Fast, stuff like that. I've been to drag racing, so it's like I'm used to like high octane stuff. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be like a regular, it's gonna be a little more extreme than a wooden coaster, but it's not gonna be too bad. I was pumped up for it. It was also a new coaster for me at the time. It was number 98 for me. Nice. So, I was hyped. I was ready to go. I'm like, yeah, we'll do this. Let's do it. And then getting onto it, I'm like, okay, this is how it's gonna, it's gonna be a Woody, a little more intense Woody, is what I kind of figured it was gonna be.
Okay. Okay, but I'm not getting fear in here at all.
I wasn't necessarily scared. If we were talking fear, like a proper fear for me was the Incredible Hulk when I was a little kid.
Okay, all right. So let's kind of revisit the question then, because it's kind of important for what we're trying to get into here. So would you say that Incredible Hulk, of all the coasters, all the rides you've been on, that's the one that kind of intimidated you the most before getting on it?
Yeah, because
okay.
Being a little kid, my dad would ride it every time we went to Islands of Adventure. He's like, we're going on it. You're going on it. You're going. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No way. Too big. This is before they retracked it too. So it was very loud. If you remember Hulk's original roar.
Oh yeah. I rode it. Yeah, it was loud.
You could hear it across the lagoon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree.
And on top of the launch, the roar, the launch, everything, it scared the hell out of me. I'm like,
how old were you when you rode it?
Oh God, maybe 9 or 10.
Okay, so you probably were just meeting the height requirement since it's 54. Yeah,
the sound enough intimidated me. Like, it was loud. Like Dueling Dragons was kind of in a little ditch, like it was down low, so it wasn't really as loud. But Hulk is right there over the midway. It's right out. And when I finally rode it, I'm like, that was the most fun. I don't know why I was so scared to ride that. That was fun.
Okay, well, before we get to that, let's take a step back. So, in the Hulk queue, and before getting on, talk to me about what you remember, at least, of how the fear was manifesting.
It was where I was scared because at that time, I had been on coasters that go upside down, but nothing that had gone upside down that high off the ground. Like that initial that roll.
Okay.
So it was like it was one of those things where it's like, oh my God, the height, and you're upside down that high off the ground. Like you start running through these scenarios in your head, like, oh crap, this, that, and well, in reality, you're perfectly safe. But I remember I was like shaking, and my dad's like, "Come on, you'll like it." He finally convinced me to go on it. I was shaking, I was crying, and like it was. But I probably wouldn't be as big of an enthusiast as I am today if my dad had not forced me to go on that and break that fear of that ride.
Sure, of course. Now, when was the breaking point? When did you go from feeling afraid to, wow, this is incredible? Like, when did that happen?
When I got off the Hulk for the first time.
It was when you got off. It wasn't during the ride. It was like it was going too fast. You had to process it at the end.
Yeah, I was like, what is like it was going so it was for me at that age, that was fast for me. Like I grew up with a little Woody coaster. Like that was it took me, like I was on the brake run and I remember just being like mouth open, just in shock, just like, what did I just ride? And then I got off and I got off. I had a chance to process it, and I'm like, that was amazing.
Gotcha. Okay, and then all right, and then how would you say that riding Hulk, given your reaction to it, what happened afterwards? How would you say that riding it impacted your life?
It broke me kind of that. When I was little, I had a very big fear of heights. So that, because even the Cobra row is tall, the loop is tall, that roll is tall. It's just like it broke that fear for like, oh, you're not that high and you're going so fast, you're up there for like a second or two. So it's kind of like, it's not that. It broke that fear of, oh my God, I'm going to be up there for so long. When in reality, it's just like you're once you're done.
Right. So is Goliath at Magic Mountain the tallest coaster you've ridden?
No, I've been on King to Ka.
Oh, you have been on Ka.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So, and you rode Ka, after Hulk, I take it.
I was probably 14 or 15 when I rode King to Ka for the first time.
Okay. And so when you rode Ka, like you didn't have that level of anxiety that you had before Hulk?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So really, okay. So it really broke your fear. Okay, great. I mean, that's what a lot of us go through. It's oftentimes a different coaster. I mean, some coasters, because of how popular they are, where they're located, they are the ones that are, the ones that people are the most afraid of. The ones we get a lot are not similar to Ka, although I know Ka wasn't the one that broke your fear, but a lot of Top Thrill Dragster answers, which is kind of sad now if you think about it. We get X2 is a very common one. There's others, but those are probably the two most common. So taking a step back away from fear, how would you say that parks and coasters in general have had a significant positive impact on your life?
It's gotten me out of my house. That's the main thing. I'm very much introverted until I'm around people that I know. Like
you are introverted?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I leave the house to go to work and to go to Magic the Gathering on Friday nights.
Okay. So
or to go to parks.
So is part of why you're like that, because I know you like gaming and you're really into PCs and stuff, is part of that kind of keeps you in?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, normally when someone says they're introverted, it means they're shy even when they meet other people. So do you need to say that you really think you're shy, or just that you're just kind of wind up staying home a lot?
So for me, I'm shy until I get to know somebody. Like I knew you because through Instagram. So I was very comfortable going up to you and say, hey, this and that. But say if, for example, if one of my friends takes me to a bar, right. for a night out, I'm going to sit at the bar and watch whatever's on TV. I'm not going to talk to people because I don't know people. It's out of my comfort zone. So I wouldn't say I'm introverted in the main introvert way where it's like, I just don't want to talk to anybody. It's like I'll go out with friends because I know who they are. But if there's people there that I don't know, I will like immediately just be like, I don't know who these people are. And kind of just sit at the bar and mind my own business.
Right. Gotcha. So, but luckily for you, because some people that have that shyness, and it's very common, even if they've talked to someone online or email with people or message with people, they're still very shy with that person in person because they haven't met them in person yet. But at least for you, just talking to someone online for a while makes you comfortable with them, so that when you meet them in person, you're good to go.
Yeah, more or less, it's how it is for me.
That's good.
So I can kind of feel out, if I'm talking to them long enough, I can kind of feel out like the vibe, that at least the beginning of it. So then when I meet them, I could be like, okay, yeah, that matches, like that matches, or hey, it's like, yeah, that it's more or less like that. Feel out the vibe of the person.
Nice. I gotcha. So, okay, interesting. Yeah, because for our listeners, the reason why I was so surprised that Brian said he was introvert is when we met up for the first time in person, during IAPA week. Again, I was talking earlier about how enthusiastic, energetic he was, very friendly and outgoing. I'm like, no, this is not an introvert. So I get it because you were comfortable with me, which is great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So by the way, you might have mentioned this earlier, but I might have missed it. So in terms of where you live down in South Florida, are you like near Miami or Fort Lauderdale, or?
I am right on the border of Palm Beach County. So I'm still in Broward, but maybe a quarter mile north is the border of Palm Beach County.
So are you near a Brightline station?
I don't know. I know there's one in
Okay.
Boca, but I think
Yeah.
that's East Boca. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it, but I do know they're building a route to Orlando.
Yes.
It'd be
Well,
much
that's
better
why
than
I
driving.
asked. I was gonna ask, so you're looking forward to trying that out?
Oh yeah. Oh, you know I'm going to take full advantage of that.
Yeah, because I've been following it. So for listeners that don't know, Brightline is a new local train network, regional train network here in Florida. That they already have kind of a local branch down in the South Florida area, connecting kind of Palm Beach, Boca, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, kind of that area. But they've actually already built the track and the extension all the way up to Orlando, and they're testing it right now. And they're going to do another branch of it, another extension out to Tampa. And there's a couple of things that are exciting about this, and I know I'm going to mention this now because it's a convenience aspect to it. A lot of people come to Florida. Plus, the union of, you and I both are car enthusiasts and coaster enthusiasts, theme park enthusiasts, and that's a pretty good union. There's a lot of park coaster enthusiasts I meant that are into cars, but likewise, there's I think even bigger union of train enthusiasts and coaster park enthusiasts. There's it's this very commonality. I know quite a few like that. So I think this might be interesting to use to our listeners. So Brightline is interesting because of what connects to and from, but also it is in the long distance stretches, say for example, from South Florida to Orlando, it's going to run at 125 miles an hour, which is no big deal in Europe or Asia or anywhere else in the world. But here in the U.S., that's a big, big, big deal. And I'm a big fan of. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's double the speed of what you're doing on the highway to get to Orlando. Like you're cutting your time in half.
And that's not even considering traffic that you might get on the turnpike or yeah. So I'm a big fan of trains. I've used them all over the world, and I've been wanting us to get better trains here in the U.S. And this is a good start. And I hope Brightline does well. I think they will, so that other projects will happen. And the other big deal about this that's related, that I'm excited for people like you, Brian, is one of the stations here in Orlando. I don't think it's going to be operational initially. I think when they go live, and I'll be one of the first ones to ride it in this spring, so the next couple of months, perhaps even by the time this interview gets released, they'll be running between Orlando and South Florida. Is the station at MCO at the airport, which is perfect. But then it's going to extend from there over to there's going to be a station at the Orlando Convention Center, which is great for IAPA, but it's also great for Epic Universe because Epic Universe is right there.
I didn't even think of that. Oh my God.
Universal is actually providing Brightline with $150 million for this to make this all happen. And Disney actually lost out. Disney was trying to make a Disney Springs station. They were trying
I remember that.
Yeah, they're trying to get them to kind of route over there, but instead they're going to the convention center, which, makes sense too. So anyway, but I'm looking forward to coming down to South Florida, kind of going the reverse direction because I live up here in Orlando, and finally going to Uncle Bernie's. And
I'll take you to Uncle Bernie's.
Yeah, awesome.
I live right near there, so I'm like 20 minutes from that.
If you live right near Uncle Bernie's, then you live fairly close to a Brightline station. Yeah, because it's not far. But awesome. Yeah, I have another friend that you'll meet down there. My friend Tyler has actually been on the podcast here in season 2. He lives down that area, and he wants to join me there too. So you'll get to meet him probably. Anyway, so enough about the Brightline. It just made me think of it because you live down in South Florida. So, kind of going beyond kind of our fear journey, and thanks for talking through that and kind of how things are important to you and so forth, and your fear journey is great because it's very typical, but that's a good thing, in that it helped you break your fear of heights, where you can ride anything, and it's allowed you to really enjoy coasters and get out, like you said. It's made you less of an introvert, and given you a new hobby over the years, and so that's all great. So what we're going to talk about now is kind of the next part of the interview is usually the most fun part. Usually there's some laughs and some interesting stories, especially for this next question. And that is, what has been your craziest moment on a coaster or on a ride?
Oh God, my craziest moment. You know what? Riding X2 for the first time.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's go into details. I can relate.
So I got 3 days by myself in the park. I cleared the park in like half a day because I went on a Friday on a Wednesday. or Thursday,
nice.
a Thursday, and it was dead.
But everything was open. All the coasters were open.
Oh yeah, everything was open.
You realize how lucky you got?
Yeah. And I went over. I hit Viper first. That was the first thing I hit. And then I went over to X. I had to. Viper's my baby. I can't.
You're an arrow enthusiast. I know. Yep.
I mean, if you could see.
Oh yeah. So this is a podcast. So I'll explain. So Brian is he's also really into 3D printing. That's the thing that you do at home there. And he's been working on. If you follow him on Instagram, you'll find out later how you can follow him. We'll do that at the end. You'll see he's been working on some 3D printing of arrow trains and track and all that fun stuff. So anyway, yeah.
But I hit Viper. I'm like, I gotta hit Viper. And I did 5 rides in the morning, just back to. It was dead, just back to back. And then I went over to X2 because it's right next to Viper.
Yeah.
And I get to the station. I'm like, I asked the ride up, best seat. What is it? He goes, back row, outside seat. That was my first mistake. Because I got on and I'm like, I couldn't figure out the restraint system. I'm like, how do I do this? But the first drop was the most insane thing I've ever felt on a roller coaster. Because you're sitting there going up the hill facing away from the lift. You're facing, if you've been on X2, you're facing away from the lift. You're going up backwards, essentially. And then next thing you know, you're 90 degrees and you're dropping straight down, or more or less straight down. I'm like, I've never felt that in my life. And it didn't terrify me, but it was something like, what was that? Oh, God.
Yep. So I have broken my fears. Basically, my fears were broken on something that you'll very much appreciate. I think I've told you this when we've been chatting online. On the Great American Scream Machine, A Great Adventure. I wrote it shortly after it opened, and I was afraid of going upside down and all the intensity and everything. And for me, my fear was broken, I think, in the first loop, because I was afraid of going upside down. And then I was going through it. I'm like, oh, wow, this isn't bad. Oh, this is fun. Oh, there's more of these. Oh, yes, bring it on. And that was all great and everything. But, I'm writing X2 later, or really I wrote it as X. I wrote it literally the first week or two it was open to the public, because I was part of Season Pass previews back in 2002. So I wrote it the original heavy arrow trains, pristine, riding any seat, including the back outer, totally fine. Although I think it's a front row ride because of the first drop. But still, I get, the back's good for forces. But I remember my friend at the time lives in San Diego, Thuzy, he and I went up there, and it was an out of body experience, as Kim, or the producer, would describe it. And I've ridden X as X and then as X2 many times since. Still, my fear of coasters, right, any kind of ride really, is broken. But every time I ride X, or any of I've ridden all 3 of the Hour 40s, all China and Japan. And whenever I ride into them, it's that first drop especially, it's a reminder of just wow. It's just like a wow, not scary, but like intense, just like, okay, and I know it's coming. I know what it's like. I'm like, it's just, I feel like I'm never ready for it. I think that's the best way to put it.
Because you can't see it coming.
Yeah, you can't see it coming, and it's so different. Yeah, there are other drops, Fury, that are taller. There are other drops that are, steeper, because of greater than 90 degrees. But just the nature of that ride system and how you're facing straight down, especially in the front, there's no one in front of you. If it's facing straight down, it is unbelievable, just unbelievable. So I totally get that would be a craziest moment on a coaster. So you haven't had like any evacs or anything like that?
I got close to an evac, but it didn't actually evac. Unfortunately, it was on Escape from Gringotts. It was the turn before the launch. We stopped for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. All the house lights came on. So you got to see kind of everything. You were facing the screen, but you could look around and see like all the track and everything. Next thing, power went, the lights went off, and the ride restarted. And I wish we'd have gotten evac, because that would have been my first evac. But no, right now, out of the 104 coasters I've been on, I've never once had an evac.
Oh, okay, so yeah, it makes sense, especially without an evac, that your X2 ride, which again, very legitimized by itself, that be a craziest moment, and that is a very good craziest moment. So I love it, and I am a big fan of those first drops on the R40s. There's nothing like it. So I don't want to say I approve because it's an opinion thing or it's an experience thing, but I can relate. I'll put it that way. So that's a great one. So you already told us this, but why don't you maybe share, remind us again what it is and share, why it is your favorite coaster. Why is Iron Gwazi your favorite coaster?
Iron Gwazi, I go based on intensity for something. There's a couple things I rank mine on. Intensity, classics, like stuff like that. So more nostalgia factors.
Right.
Hence why Iron Gwazi wasn't my number one until I got a midnight ride on it.
Okay, what was your number one before it?
Viper at Magic Mountain.
Of course. Okay.
Which is now my number two.
Right. Well, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if this, at the end of the day, it's just lists and fun stuff. It doesn't matter. But if it helps you in your head, some people, they have two number ones. And what I mean by that is they have a legitimate, like based on, the experience, the ride forces, etc. number one. And then they have like an emotional or a sentimental number one. So I would think that Viper would be your sentimental, emotional number one.
Right.
And Iron Gwazi is your like legit number one. But,
yeah, more or less put it that way. I'd put it as my sentimental number one, but also that ride just blew me away. So it was good enough to take my number two spot as well.
Yeah. So I remember. Okay. So one of my friends, and I say this periodically in the podcast, and he's on my list. I think I just talked to him about this. So one of my buddies, you might have met him when you were out at Busch Gardens. Because unfortunately, I couldn't meet you out there because of schedule. He's a Busch Gardens local. He's a local floozy here in Central Florida. Really good friend of mine. Amazing guy, Kalen Prophet. And you probably know of him if you haven't met him. He is famous because he has over 2,000 rides on Iron Gwazi.
Oh, okay. I know who that is. I didn't meet him. I don't know what he looks like, but I do know who that is.
You will love him. And yeah, you guys got to meet. Hopefully next time, well, not this coming trip, but future trips up here, we can coordinate it so I meet you or join you over at Busch Gardens and I can introduce you to him. He's there all the time, but really wonderful guy. So Kalen, and again, we do funny things as Thuzies. We say funny things. We're controversial. We're weird. So Kalen works next door to Busch Gardens. He works at I don't know if he wants to be public where he works, so I won't say, but he works nearby to Busch Gardens. And he's there basically every day. And he was saying, because I've known him for years now, back in like 2019, 2020, they were building it, the first test runs, leading up to the pandemic. He was saying way back then that it is his new number one. He wasn't even close to riding it. I'm like, yeah, we haven't ridden it yet. It's like, it's my number one. I'm like, okay. All right. And it became his number one, obviously. And, a lot of people were saying, remember that concept POV that Busch Gardens put out like long before it opened, and people were watching that like, it's not gonna be better than Steel Vengeance, and blah 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 blah. And the concept POVs, they can be very accurate and everything, but you don't get the ride forces from them, and it's hard to imagine that, So that's really what's missing from that. Now, again, my opinion, I've been on both. The Iron Gwazi is far better than Steel Vengeance. Iron Gwazi is my number one RMC, and yeah, it's not as long. Just like Iron Gwazi is not as long as Twisted Colossus, but it's not about the quantity or the length of the ride. It's about the quality of it. And when we interviewed Jake Kilcup last year, COO of RMC, about Iron Gwazi, and we actually interviewed him before it opened, and he was happy to talk about it because the interview wasn't getting released until after the ride opened, so he was okay talking about the ride a bit. And he said that, one, we're going to love it, and two, Alan, because it was Alan's swan song, it was his last coaster that he designed. No, it is not Wildcat's Revenge. Wildcat's Revenge was designed years ago for a Hershey Park. They sat on it, and it's just opening later. They decided to finally build it or convert it. But no, Iron Gwazi was the last design that Alan did, and he wanted to make it his opus, his magnum opus. And so he wanted to make it kind of the greatest hits of his design for RMC. And he did that. And it's just the pacing of it, the layout of it's fantastic. It's just fantastic. The barrel roll down drop, to take that, instead of that being that first drop at a slow speed, like on Twisted Timbers, put it in the middle of the ride when you're at kind of maximum speed or high speed, brilliant. And that's so forceful. The wave turn of the station, epic. The transition in and out of the stall, fantastic. All the airtime in the second half, it's just great. And I'm curious. So you've not ridden Steel Vengeance yet?
I have not been to Cedar Point. I have been to very few parks so far, actually. But because we have so many coasters here in Florida, I've been able to build most of my credits are from Florida.
Yeah, sure. I believe it. Yeah, for sure.
I've been to Knott's, I've been to Magic Mountain, and I've been to Great Adventure. Those and Superland out in Israel. Those are the couple parks that I've been to that are outside of Florida.
Gotcha. Interesting. We obviously have to get to Cedar Point. I'm very curious. One of my most controversial spicy takes as an enthusiast is my opinion of Steel Vengeance. I actually think it's one of the worst RMCs. For reasons. It's very uncomfortable for me. It kills my thighs, and it's way too monotonous. There is such a thing as too much airtime, which again, I'm sure enthusiasts are screaming at me right now, because when you have only airtime, it's boring. You got to have variety. You've got other stuff, and that's what Iron Gwazi's got. That's what Velocicoaster has. That's what Terran has. That's what the best coasters in the world have, and Steel Vengeance doesn't have that. So anyway, but that's my opinion. We all have opinions. So I'm curious to see because obviously you love RMC, like a lot of people. I'm curious to see what you think of Steel Vengeance when you ride it. So
I get the one thing that I feel like it's not going to live up, because it's been so overhyped.
Yep.
That I feel like it's not going to have the same punch as if I had never, like Iron Gwazi, I'd heard a few people say, oh, it's really good at this and that. But Steel Vengeance, anyone you ask, it's really good. Oh my God, it's the best RMC. It's the best RMC. It's the best RMC. See, now for me, it's going to be like, is it though? I think everyone has their own way of ranking coasters.
Oh, of course.
So for me, it might not even come close for me because of how I prefer nostalgia and classics over modern intense stuff.
Yeah. And I respect that and you're a little bit unique in that regard. I think that's cool. I mean, it's cool to chart your own path. So I think I love that. So actually, why don't you kind of maybe expand upon that for our audience? Because we don't get a lot of people on here that have that sort of perspective.
So growing up, I've always had a thing. I'll use this as an example for classic cars. I love classic cars. I go to classic car shows. I like preserving older historical stuff that has historical value.
Sure.
So, for example, the original Corkscrew at what's the park it's at now? Silverwood.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
That park couldn't have said, "No, I don't want it." But that coaster's a bucket list for me because it's the first aero Corkscrew.
Right.
And it's I went to Magic Mountain and I was telling my friends over in I have little groups that I'm in where we talk a lot of roller coaster stuff. Like later on in the night we'll hop on and like them and I will talk roller coasters for hours. I went to Magic Mountain because of how many arrows there were. Not for like Goliath or not for like Twisted Colossus. I went because I want to ride the arrows. Those are out. Those are going out. Those are all on their way out because that company's not in business anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you have SNS who makes parts, but those coasters are 40 plus years old. Now, maybe not Viper. Oh no, she's getting there. But again, those coasters without Aero, you wouldn't have RMC. You wouldn't have some of the innovations that B&M or Vekoma or Intamin have put out. Aero was the leading manufacturer at the time.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, to use a classic car reference. Again, I love cars as well, as we talked about. Aero is the Ford of coasters, of steel coasters, and the pioneers. And so Brian, you've seen the Legacy of Aero documentary, right?
I've seen parts of it. I've never sat and watched the whole thing, unfortunately.
Oh, Brian. Ryan, I know it's late now, maybe tomorrow. Watch it. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times now. It's amazing. Shout out to Chris Robery, friend of mine, Ace member. I used to work with him on the Ace podcast, so I was part of that too. And great guy, works for Ride Entertainment, does a lot of work with Gerstlauer. Great guy, and he did an amazing job with that documentary. And he and another great friend, and also friend of this podcast, Scott Shaper, the amazing Orlando Scott, Upstop Media.
I know him.
He's an awesome guy, good friend. He and Chris they're doing a Schwarzkopf documentary, kind of legacy of Schwarzkopf. Yeah,
very nice.
Which I think Schwarzkopf is
second up there with Arrow.
Yeah, they're the second. Yeah, they literally are the second. Yeah. I agree with you. Arrows, coasters, wood coasters, you can more easily maintain. I mean, I don't have the nostalgia level that you do have, but yeah, I appreciate the hell out of it. I'll use the word just like you did earlier. Not the worst word in the world. I used to have Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk as my home park. Used to live in Santa Cruz, love living out there at least in certain ways. And that park is, if you're a nostalgic person with parks and coasters, next California trip, make sure you go there. It's such a great park to be around, and it's been in movies. And anyway, but the Giant Dipper, it's not the best Woody. It's not like a GCI or
right.
Voyage, but for what it is, it's fantastic. Right on the beach, by the beach there. It's a labor of love, and it's well over 100 years old now. The Cyclone as well, similarly.
Yeah, I love the Cyclone. I love the Cyclone.
If you love the Cyclone, you'll like the Giant Dipper. It's not as intense as the Cyclone, but it's a great. It's kind of like a Millennium Force, which I know you've not been on yet. It's not the most intense Woody, but it's beautiful view and the location and everything. But
the scenery definitely helps roller coasters.
Yeah. So the wooden coasters they can maintain because it's just wood. You don't have to get a part from a specific company. The steel coasters, it's a little more difficult to replicate. And to that point, even the Disney Space Mountains that are inside that don't get subjected to weather, they're going away. The one in Tokyo is getting redone. The one at Disneyland proper's already been redone by Vekoma. The one I was just riding the one here in Magic Kingdom with some friends a couple nights ago, and we're like, we love it. We were talking about how the layout we think is the best of all the Space Mountains. But anyway. But you were all like, yeah, this is going to get replaced because it's getting rough. And,
wasn't it didn't it get a massive retracking in like the early 2000s?
It may have. I don't know. But it didn't get a rebuild like Hulk or like, the Disneyland one did to that level. It needs work. It needs help. Or maybe the trains, maybe they just need brand new trains because those trains are so old.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but maybe they could extend the life of it by that. But yeah, the arrows are going, so I totally get it. Why you need to ride them while you can.
Yeah, my next big trip is going to be Virginia for that's going to probably be next year for Busch Gardens. What's the other parks? Busch Gardens, Kings Dominion. Yep, Anaconda. Nessie.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah, Nessie runs really well, but it runs slow. But it was pretty smooth. I just rode it again last year. But yeah,
it's so iconic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, if I had to bet money on like with the last Arrow loopers that'll be standing, I would put it on Nessie. I would put it on X2. Well, I wouldn't say it's a looper. But like arrows that'll be standing. Nessie, X2, and Canyon Blaster.
I would say Tennessee Tornado.
Yeah, that was 99, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the last one. Have you not been to Dollywood?
No.
You need to go because Tennessee Tornado actually runs really well.
I did a model of Tennessee Tornado. I have it sitting up on my shelf.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But that loop is it looks odd.
Yeah, they went in a different direction because they had learned from previous. And no, it's not the best layout of the Arrow Mega Loopers,
short.
And it's short, but it runs well, and part of it's because it's newer, but it's not that new. It's it's over 20 years old, but it runs well. They take good care of it too. So
they also use hardlining on that, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, because again they had computer modeling at that point, so I think that's part of why it's smoother feeling. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. So, all right, fun nostalgia there. Arrow is awesome. Watch the documentary, Brian. That's your homework. So, on the other end of the spectrum, what would you say is your least favorite coaster?
Hurricane at Fun Spot.
Oh, the Miler. Yeah.
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 Because I've ridden other ENF Milers and they were really fun. This one just bangs you around.
Yeah.
Like it and I'm also like 6'1", almost 6'2". Someone that tall in a car that small.
Yeah.
No, I got banged up pretty bad on that one. That was a one and done for me. Those turns were thrown against the side, and people are like, "Oh, it's a good ride." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't." It was a one and done for me. I will not rewrite it. It was that bad.
Yeah. It's rough. I've ridden it a couple times. It was a one and done, but I'm sure I'll ride it again because what happens is and I love this, I love living in Orlando because, well, one, the amazing parks we have, but two, other reasons as well. But pertaining to this episode, to this interview, another big reason is all the friends that come to visit. And, a lot of people come to visit, they may have been to Disney or Universal or whatnot, but a lot of them have not been to Fun Spot yet. And so they want their credits, want to catch up. And so, I wound up meeting friends at Fun Spot invariably. And, yeah, sure, I could stay off ride. And if I'm not feeling great, I'm not going to ride Mind Blower every time because that is so rough. Mm-hmm. But Hurricane, I'll ride as long as I'm in a good mood, I guess. I'll ride it with them. But yeah, Fun Spot Kissimmee is a little bit rough. It's the janky Fun Spot.
Yeah. I know. Do they have a kiddie coaster at the Kissimmee one? Because I don't think I've been on that.
Yeah, they have a kiddie one.
I may need that credit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can do that. And then they have a Wild Mouse as well.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was gonna go because I know for my April 1st I have a change of plans because I found out that Warrant is playing at SeaWorld Food Festival.
Oh.
So I'll be going to see Warrant with my partner.
Nice. Well, Pipeline just started testing today.
I saw that. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Full disclosure, this interview is being recorded in early to mid-March. So it's kind of dated it by mentioning when Pipeline started testing. That's all right.
I'm praying pass holder previews will be started by then.
Yeah. I was just telling Kim today that it may be open by, or may have previews going by then. We'll see. But
because I've got my Platinum Pass. And I will be taking full advantage of it if it's doing previews.
Oh, sure. Of course. All right. So next couple of questions these are our last kind of mean questions. And they're kind of thought provoking. The first one, at least here in this season, and explain to everyone what it's about. It's a new question. Coaster Challenge has been around. It predates the podcast. We had a YouTube channel, still do. And Coaster Challenge has been around about 8 years now. Mm-hmm. And it has some long-standing fans because of that. And one of our most long-standing fans, going back to the early days, even before I think I joined the channel back in 2018, we had this very nice kid named Dusty who lives out in California, not far from David. And David became very close with him and his family, his parents. I actually interviewed his mom on the podcast here in season 1. Very nice people. And Dusty sadly suddenly passed away a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
And it hit especially David understandably because he knew Dusty in person, and was close with him, lived out there near him. It hit David understandably really hard. And so David kind of has been thinking a lot about mortality. And so inspired by Dusty and Dusty's memorial that he attended is where this next question comes from. So thinking about, however long your life lasts, hopefully a much longer time because you're young, whenever your life it's done, how would you say you would like your family, your friends, your colleagues, people that knew you, how would you like them to remember you by?
Well, that's a good one. Wow. As someone who lived life to the fullest, wanted to, loved roller coasters, went out and rode all his favorite coasters. He he's been saying for years how he wanted to go, and he went and he did it, and he filled his bucket list, I guess you could say, is that he did what he wanted to do in life, and he lived a very full life, and he left his mark on the world in terms of music and stuff like that. So that's a really tough question.
Well, I think your answer is great. Your answer is great. I mean, as the saying goes these days, it sounds like you want to be remembered for living your best life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, that was one of the big reasons I got into music as well, is so that, God forbid, an accident or something, there's still, my music is still there. So
what do you play, by the way?
I do vocals. I'm a metal vocalist.
Oh,
yeah. I do play guitar, as you can see behind me. For those who are on the podcast, I play guitar. Or who are listening, I play guitar. Not very well, but I play it just to know it, just to play it and have fun with it. But no, I do screaming, guttural, fries, false chords, stuff like that.
Oh wow, are you in a band?
I am. I'm in two bands. I'm in a band called Arbiter, which is more of a hardcore style band. And then I'm in a band called Primordial Eden, which is a more symphonic metalcore style, which is more like bands like Mice and Men, stuff like that.
Oh, nice. Do you guys have any music, say on like Apple Music, Spotify? Things
we
like
do.
That,
yeah, my band Arbiter used to go by a different name. It used to go by Secret to the Crypt. We recorded our EP in the kitchen. It's not great, but I'd never done anything at the time, so it's like we just kind of did it to have fun. But now I'm taking everything, we're doing everything properly. We have a studio now. We've got all kinds of stuff. So
nice, awesome. Yeah, you're second, maybe third or so of the guests we've had on, of the 115, 20 so guests we've had on. That actually is in a band and actually a vocalist as well, guitar and vocalist. My friend Dylan, who lives up right near Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, he's in a band. He's only 16, and they're already performing live performances. Selling tickets to shows.
Oh, wow.
It's like, he and his bandmates. I've met one of his bandmates as well. Really talented kids. Yeah, pretty amazing. Yeah, really, really good. So yeah, that's fun. I don't think I knew that about you. I knew that you were into kind of heavier music, like heavy metal kind of stuff. I didn't realize you actually perform it. That's really cool.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have a new track coming out. I don't know when it's coming out, but we are starting the final vocal recording on it and the mixing. So hopefully by summer it'll be out. We're hoping.
Nice.
So awesome. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So the last main question, and then we'll do our allow you to kind of share how people can find you and all that after that.
Right.
But the last main question, another kind of thought-provoking one, and this could be anything, but generally people answer this in the frame of our mission, theme park therapy, facing fears, dealing with anxiety, depression, trying to live your best life in spite of challenges. Do you have any advice you'd like to share with people, maybe people that are struggling?
If you're struggling and you're trying to put up with, let's say you're going through a rough time in your life, don't be afraid to reach out to people that you say look up to. They may not see it, but the fact that you could get it out of your system and know that, hey, and if they do see it, people you look up to, definitely is the way, or isn't the way I say it, but people that you look up to definitely. Oh no, this is tough. The best thing is people that you look up to, whether it's a small influencer or a rather large influencer. Just be like, hey, and you may not see this, but I'm going through some stuff right now, and I just want to thank you for, hey, you're getting me through this or stuff like that. Because I know for me, I've had, funny enough, in music, I've had someone say, hey, your music got me to this point. And I'm like, that means a lot. Even to me, as someone who's in a small band that has played 2 shows, to know that someone's come up to me and said, hey, your music helped me get through this. It's like, oh my God, I've changed. It not only does it makes the influencer feel good in a good way, not like it makes them feel good in like that kind of off way, but it's something that even just getting out of your system can help you.
So okay, so let me see if I follow this, because we definitely never had this advice before, and we love this question because we tend to never get the same thing twice.
Right.
And as the podcast grows in age and experience, if you will, as we have more guests on, it's like more impressive in that regard. It's really kind of fun, kind of psychological, sort of societal sort of thing. But anyway, so you're saying that if you're struggling to reach out to someone on social media that you look up to, and let them know how they inspire you,
right, or how they got you through that tough time.
Okay.
Because,
so
like I said,
go ahead.
even just getting it out of your system and venting it out, whether it's to a DM of somebody on Instagram or something,
right.
Even just knowing that you have that sort of way to kind of not deal with it, but get it out of your system. You have a way to let people know that, hey, you're being heard, essentially.
Okay, so obviously for the whoever the influencer may be, I mean, obviously that can make them feel good and they can appreciate it. But for the person that's struggling, you feel good because you're sort of getting it out there, something positive that you realize about your life,
right,
and you're sharing that with that person that inspires you.
Right.
Okay. That's really interesting. I get it. Yeah.
And something else that I've always done is don't be afraid. Ever since like I started overcoming fears, don't be afraid to take that step, because that step could set the course for your life. Like for me, I wouldn't have some of the friends I have if I had never rode Hulk, because that broke my fear of big roller coasters, like big, high speed roller coasters.
Oh yeah.
Some of my greatest. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So some of my greatest friends are all enthusiasts like you. Like I'm hanging out with a bunch of different people when I go up to Orlando. See at SeaWorld, afterwards, other stuff. I'm meeting up with a bunch of people, and those are some of the people that I talk to all the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's very meaningful. I've said for a long time now, the social side of this hobby is one of the best parts of it, and something that a lot of us don't necessarily think of or consciously think of. And yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. Yeah, absolutely. It's really meaningful. Really meaningful.
Yeah. And a lot of enthusiasts are all there for each other.
Yep.
Like I've seen some people say, hey, rough times, and then their comments will be just all uplifting from other enthusiasts. It's a great community if you stay on that side of it. But for the most part, everyone's there for each other.
Yeah. So a couple things to unpack with that. So first, you talked about if you hadn't ridden Hulk, or to be fair, if you hadn't ridden Hulk, or if you hadn't conquered your fear on some other coaster, and really, so that's a realistic way to look at it, and that's still very significant, then you wouldn't have met, various people. We wouldn't be talking here today, and, and for who knows who this interview, who's listening right now, who you could be helping. And that's the whole, big point of this, one of the big points, not the only, but one of the main kind of parts of our mission, aspects of our mission. The other thing you mentioned about, staying on the positive side of the social interactions in the community. And, this is something that's a little tricky, and you and I have talked offline about this. This podcast, we stay out of politics, we stay out of most controversial issues, but we have taken a stand about some of the worst negativity that's recently occurred in this community. And you yourself saw it, at IAPA last year. And I personally am a little more outspoken than some of the rest of the producers here on the show, but I am outspoken in a way that the person that we're referring to here, I am encouraging that person to get the help that she needs, because she clearly has psychological issues and major narcissistic problems, narcissistic persona, which she herself doesn't realize, because narcissists, they cannot accept who they are. That's a fundamental aspect of their being. And she needs a lot of help. And I would love to see her become awesome person and get the therapy and everything. But there's people like her and others. There's others out there that are a problem in the community. They're toxic. They take advantage of people financially. There's pedophiles. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But thankfully, they're in the minority. Yeah. And I know that because I am blessed to have many friends in this community. And those friends are amazing people, not just to me, but to others with different viewpoints and different political beliefs. And, again, but they're good people. That's how friends should be. Friends should be good people, and be there for their friends, even if their opinions are different, or unique, or they vote for a different candidate, but there are, unfortunately some very toxic, intolerant people out there in any community, including ours. But again, some people are, I have a friend, very close friend of the show, David's and mine. I'm not going to say who he is. He's a coaster enthusiast, and he's very negative about the community. He doesn't like to be involved in the community because he thinks it's full of crazy people and bad people. And again, he's a good friend, but I disagree with him on this point. The vast majority of the people in the community are awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I see that more and more. I see that at events like Hollywood Nights, going to Coaster Stock for the first time this year. And, so many friends, so many good people are going to be there. Ace events I've been to, the media events that I meet, as some of them are personal friends. Again, this community has a lot of positivity in it, and our mission here at this podcast is to increase that positivity. And for the negative people in the community, again, we're not trying to force them out. We don't want to force them out. We just want them to become better people, get the help that they need. A lot of it's psychological. A lot of it, people need therapy and whatnot. So anyways, but yeah, no, thank you for that advice. And I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, very unique there. And I had to kind of piece it together because I was trying to understand where you're coming from, because it was new advice about, messaging someone that you look up to. And what's great about that advice, by the way, just one last thing, is it's a win-win. It's sort of a double positive. It's good for the influencer. You're going to probably make their day. And it's also good for you because you're getting it out there. Like you said, you're getting it out. So that's great. So thanks for sharing. So the last thing here, Brian, is, as I've alluded to a couple times earlier in the interview, you love that coasters and parks have gotten you to be less of an introvert, and you get, love talking to people on Instagram and so forth. And so to that end, if you'd like, whatever you'd like to share as far as how people can get a hold of you and talk to you, just like your advice, maybe someone, found this interview really uplifting and they want to let you know that, or just get to know you. Maybe someone in South Florida, maybe some new friends or whatnot.
Right.
Go to Uncle Bernie's with you, or come up here, or ride Brightline up here to Orlando with you.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, So anyone that wants to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So I have two. I have my Facebook page is Midnight Coasters. It's a little dead. Trying to bring it back. I kind of stay off Facebook a lot. Same with Twitter. I don't have a Twitter anymore. For me, Instagram is the main one I use. That's going to be Midnight Coasters with a underscore, Midnight underscore Coasters. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Any time of day. Because I watch, so I do see notifications even if I'm at work. YouTube for my music is going to be, I have to update it. It's going to be Secrets of the Crypt for my heavier stuff. My lighter stuff is going to be Primordial Eden. My roller coaster one has been Midnight Coasters, as it should be, is my roller coaster page. But yeah, that's more or less it. Thank you again for having me on. Had a lot of fun. Got to talk about some cool stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. It was awesome having you. I mean, again, we're friends, so I always love talking to you. But again, I thought you'd be a good person to kind of share with our audience. And yeah, it was a great conversation, some good advice and good stories. So thanks again for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you want to see more of us, we upload every Friday. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All at Coaster Challenge. Links are in the description below. Thanks for joining us here today.